Good evening, Erev Tov.
Good evening, Erev Tov. And let us begin. Last week we had we will continue as usual with the Pirkei Avot, with the ethics of the fathers. And last week we learned the Mishna. I'll bring up the Mishna again just to remind us what we were learning last week. And we hope to be joined by Rav Shmuel. Had something that just came up urgent. He hopes to be able to join us, and Rav Natan is here with us right now. Shalom, Rav Natan. Welcome to the Beit Midrash. And I also hope that people didn't get stuck in the old link. I sent a reminder on the email, so I do hope that people will join us. So without further delay, we started a bit late. I would like to share the Mishnah that we saw last week and a bit of the summary before we go forward. So we saw that the Mishnah brought us three different elements that we discussed last week at length. Aseh lecharav, that one shall appoint or make for him a rabbi. Kneh lechaver, to acquire a friend. We had a fantastic discussion and listening from you and different ideas. What does a friend mean? What does it mean to have a friend? How do you acquire a friend? And I think at the end of the shiur, we were talking about the fact that this could be seen as stages. In other words, that some of the questions that came forward from you last week was, well, in terms of the last part, judging all people with merit or to see them in good eyes, well, am I being naive about that, or am I losing my own boundaries by doing so? And what about evil people? Many questions that could be answered and asked about this. And one of the things that was brought forward was that one has to have his own path in life in order to be able to go out and be able to accept and welcoming towards others. So it's very important to acquire a path in life, which can only be through a mentoring of a rabbi, of having someone who knows you. And it's not only about right and wrong, as we spoke about, but it's having a path, having someone with you along that path. And then once you have that foundation, you can go forward. And we learned last week in length, Rabbi Nachman, the very famous Torah Reish Pei Bet, the 282nd piece of Rabbi Nachman, in which he discusses about Ayin Tovah, that we actually, when we look at someone with good eyes, we're able to find within them the beauty, and then through that awaken within them a reflection that they want to be a better person. And in that sense, many people just need that. It's not saying, I don't know that you did wrong, but rather to awaken in them the goodness, the purity of the goodness that is among them. So that's a summary of the shiur from last week. And I would like to go forward into the next Mishnah and also see how the different Mishnayot connect to one another. Rav Natan, if you want to begin with the Mishnah.
Okay, so hello everybody. We're moving forward to the next Mishnah of Nitai HaArbeli, Nitai the Arbelite. Would anybody want to read the Mishnah out loud?
In English?
Yes, why not? Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Nitai the Arbelite used to say, keep a distance from an evil neighbor, do not become attached to the wicked, and do not abandon faith in divine retribution.
Thank you. So These are words of Nitai HaArbeli, as we read last Mishnah. He was the couple of Yehuda ben of Yosha ben Parachia. And let's look at what he says, and then I think we will be able to see many interesting connections to what we've learned last week. So he says, keep a distance from an evil neighbor, and do not become attached to the wicked, and do not abandon faith in divine retribution. So let's walk step by step. Keep a distance from an evil neighbor. What would be the merit of keeping a distance from an evil neighbor? What could an evil neighbor do to me? What does it mean, an evil neighbor? In what way an evil neighbor is someone that I need to keep a distance from? Yes, Mikhail.
I think that the evil neighbor is one that doesn't wish you everything good or well.
So you're understanding that he's just suggesting something that is pretty obvious. Don't get into danger, something like that. Don't do something that that has the ability to harm you.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. That's an interesting question. That's an interesting answer, but in a way, I think it's pretty obvious to say. It's like saying don't cut yourself on using a knife, right? It's something very obvious to say. Don't be close to someone who might harm you. Would you agree?
Yes, I agree.
Yes. So let's try and think. How would that be something that? How does this statement brings us to something that is not as obvious, something that really we should learn? Maybe we can take the two parts together. Keep a distance from an evil neighbor and do not become attached to the wicked.
Can I just ask something? Rasha in Hebrew is the same like wicked?
I think usually I think it would be more or less the similar. Rasha will be sometimes evil will be Rasha and not wicked, and sometimes the opposite. I don't know what would exactly be the difference. Generally, when we say a Rasha, we mean that it has something to do with his actions, that he did something that make him a Rasha. For instance, a person who does evil things is a Rasha. Someone who is only evil in his, he could be evil without doing anything, he still will be Ra. But the Rasha, I think, would be connected more to his deeds in a way, but it's not necessarily like that. But how do you understand that? This order to distance yourself from evil. Maybe I will make the question even stronger. Shouldn't we make evil? Shouldn't we fix the evil? Shouldn't we turn evil into good? Like when he tells us to keep a distance from an evil neighbor, why wouldn't he tell us attach yourself to an evil neighbor and make him a good neighbor, or attach yourself to a wicked friend so you can make him a better person? Yes, Shulamit.
Good evening, everyone. I would say spontaneously, because if he's wicked, like obviously wicked, I do not want that to influence me. I don't want to become wicked. I don't want it to affect me. That's my spontaneous reaction.
So you're saying keep your distance is basically saying, you have to make sure you keep yourself. You're safe within your boundaries, so you won't learn from him.
Yeah, and also just, if I'm definitely sure that he is wicked, then I also believe that his path is different from mine. Of course, that would require that I am seeing with my own eyes that this is obviously wicked. I wouldn't walk around judging whoever makes a mistake of being wicked. But if he's obviously wicked, then I have no business being there.
Yes, I would like to comment that here he is definitely inviting us to judge people, right? I need to see if every person I meet, I need to see if he's wicked. He has, according to the way that you're understanding, he has some threat on me. He could turn me into someone who's not so good, so I should distance myself. So he's inviting us to judge in a way.
This is a big opening to Lashon Hara.
A big opening to Lashon Hara. Should I tell others to distance themselves from the same person, since I say that he is a Rasha, right? That's a good question. Rebecca, what are you saying, Rebecca Stukel?
Yes, hi. I was just thinking that it's also interesting with the neighbor part, that it's someone you cannot really distance yourself from. Or being a neighbor is someone who lives, or maybe not live, but are close to you. So maybe it's also, I don't know, that it's around you in your society, like community or your close community, or it's more reflection. I don't know if I have anything smart to say about it, but it's, yeah.
It was pretty smart, thank you. It's interesting because what you're saying is even raising the question of Lashon Hara even more, right? Like, if I'm imagining, you're looking to buy a new apartment, so you're going around and you're seeing, I don't know, you're seeing the bedroom, and you're seeing the kitchen, and you're seeing if there's a yard or isn't there a yard, and the plumbing and everything. And then you have to ask the person who's selling you, tell me, do you have any evil neighbors around, right? Like you said, you can't, if you really take this Mishna seriously, so you have to start asking around when you want to live next to someone. Are you wicked? Are you not wicked? Because I need to go by the Mishnah and not live next to a wicked neighbor, right? Yes,
I was thinking. Yes, please, Shulamit.
Good evening, Rabbi. No, I was just wanted to interject when Rabbi Natan, when you just said the example of buying a house. I wouldn't ask it this way. I approximately know what wicked is. I'm going to ask for the things that are wicked. I'm not going to call it wicked. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So you're saying that essentially we all do it anyway in terms of well-being.
Depending on our definition of wicked, which...
Yeah. Yes, Rav Moshe David.
I'm thinking that literally, if we translate Shachen Ra, it means a bad neighbor or an evil neighbor, as was said. At what point does a person become evil? I think it's more difficult. I think it's too easy for us, especially nowadays, when we're being so used to being judgmental about others. And what we see in society, the polarization in society, then it's very easy to it's much easier to push someone away and say they're bad rather than to bring them close. In other words, we know that we have a mitzvah, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Re'ah, as we mentioned last week, is actually a neighbor. It's someone who's close to you. So it's someone nearby in that same sense. So how do I actually work with that? On the one hand, I have a positive mitzvah that I have to go forward and try to love the person who's next to me. And on the other hand, to distance myself. So how does that work? In other words, is it, do I knock on the door and then run away if I see the wrong face? How does that work? At what point do I actually decide that something is evil enough that I have to stay away from it? And at one point, do I have to overcome the fact that maybe I don't like the person, maybe he doesn't think alike to me, but that the person is not evil, or maybe some things that he does. I mean, kamocha, we learned v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha means that love someone like yourself. So I wouldn't want anyone labeling me as evil, even though I know that I'm not perfect. So at what point do I say, well, that's not like me? That's really evil. That's something that I have to keep my kids away from. That's something I have to keep away from myself. It's a question also in terms of, I was just thinking, well, what if someone has a criminal background and they've gone to prison, done their sentence? So is that person, and that person is now my neighbor. Do I accept, is that person labeled for me? Or do I accept that we have to believe there's tshuva? We saw that in one of the shiurim, that we have to believe about every person, especially someone righteous, that they've done tshuva, even if I've seen them sinning that same day. So I think it's very complex, is what I'm saying. I'm not bringing anything, any good answers maybe. I think it's just really complex to have that balance between what we saw, the notion that we saw last week about seeing the best in people, and then keeping my distance so that something doesn't influence me.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope to, in a few moments, to really make some kind of a, to see the both Mishnayot and try to see how we can learn from one to each other. But yeah, let's hear a few more ideas here. Mikhail?
Yes, I think that for example, I would think like we should not listen what other people say about someone and not judge the person that way. But if we have to open ourselves to meet everybody and to be polite and nice. But if you see that you do some action to other people that is not good, or you experience something not good that you do to yourself, then you should maybe step away from him or something.
Yes, I must say that to me, I'll tell you a little story. I used to love to go in Jerusalem. There's an area called Mea She'arim, and in Mea She'arim there are many Hasidic groups who operate there. When I say groups, communities, it could be also thousands of people. And Hasidic means they're very, very, very orthodox and mostly closed groups. They don't like to see people who are very different than them. And they do on Sukkot, every evening they're doing Simchat Beit HaShoeva. Every evening of Sukkot, there's a band playing and they're dancing with the Rebbe. And I liked to go there as a teenager, every evening to a different one to see, to have this experience. It was a very spiritual, very special experience. And one time I got to one of the most fanatic groups there, and I started dancing, and I realized that I'm dancing with one hand, but my other hand is empty, and nobody gives me the hand on my left. And I looked, I saw that there's a little child who dances with his father next to me, and his father told him all the time, don't give his hand to him, don't give his hand to him. And in the end, there was some other chassid, some other person who went in and saved the boy not to give me his hand. And I was pretty offended. You know, the notion that I'm so bad, so awful, or so different, that a child shouldn't give me his hand, made me feel bad. And so this question of don't attach yourself to whatever is bad, and we're still debating about what exactly is the definition of bad. But let's say you have your definition of bad. Is the solution, so if we're going by the suggestion of Mikael, so really this is very simple. If you see that you're going to get hurt in any way, go away. You're not supposed to get hurt. But if our problem is to attach ourselves to the wicked man, because he might affect you, because he might, because you might learn from him. So then the question is really, aren't we strong enough? Aren't we strong enough to be where we are and affect the others and make others become different? How come we're so afraid that we will become different?
Maybe the question is, who is the one that have the right to decide who is wicked?
Well, it seems it's given to us, right? Every person, the Mishnah says it as a general statement to anybody who reads the Mishnah, right? Yes, Shulamit.
No, I just wanted to say that I agree with Mikael that if I understood it correctly, that it is like one shouldn't walk around label the neighbor or whoever being bad, but that the behavior simply shows what's going on. If you see something, then to keep away from that. But I also believe that it's not just about if it will affect me. I don't know. I see somebody doing something that's not okay for me, and then I will imitate it. No, of course not. Like we are not children. It's not. I don't think it's on that level. I also believe that even spiritually you can get hurt, or you can feel uncomfortable, or like not feeling the way you. And I don't know, maybe it is a bigger challenge to stay spiritually comfortable in a place that is uncomfortable, but I'm not sure why I would want to put myself through that, if I make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Rav Natan, if I could share a story as well. Actually, two short stories, which will just keep everything complex, or maybe make things more confusing. The first story is a very short story. I remember that my wife's grandfather, blessed memory, he grew up in Leipzig, and was there, managed to leave just around Kristallnacht, the pogroms. And I remember him telling me, he told me that growing up in Germany in the 30s, it was that the Nazi parades were so powerful that had he not been a Jew, he would have for sure joined. So it's almost a shocking statement to hear from him but the power that he's saying that the folk, that power of the people and that power of raising, of following were so strong that he said, it wasn't afterwards saying, I understand them, why they joined. He said, I myself at the time felt that I would have joined. So that's one short story in terms of environment and evil, which we can all agree is evil. I think there's no question. Speaking about the same evil or the complexity of it, I heard a fascinating lecture from Professor Christer Mattsson, who's the head of Segerstedt Institute in Göteborg, and has dealt with Nazism and neo-Nazism in Sweden since a young age. And he described how he tried growing up in an area where there were many, many neo-Nazis. As a young teacher, he was teaching them and trying to understand, you know, where they come from. And at the end of the day, he told many stories, but that when he was able to become their friends, he understood that they were just very lonely people, that they had nothing else, and that they told him so. And that he managed in some way to get through to them and be there for them, and in that way maybe not change them, but you know, create some type of a change. I won't go into a long story when he went with some of them actually to Auschwitz, but the point is that do we manage to get under the skin? In other words, do we manage to touch, you know, where is this coming from through support and through friendship? So it's the same, I think, as I said, it's just bringing two stories forward in the complexity of this. What is our task? Is our task to realize the dangers of being pulled in, like we see today, like we saw back to the 30s and etc. We don't have to, we see it throughout the political arena throughout Europe and in the world today. Or at the other end is our job, as you were just saying of Natan before. Why are we so afraid? We have Hashem on our side. I mean, we are coming with the Torah. We're coming with, you know, we have to fix the world. That's what, you know, and it's so easy to say, I'm just going to keep away, but isn't it our task actually? So again, I have this right and left that in these two stories.
Mm-hmm. So I think that maybe we should just finish this this last part of the Mishnah that we didn't touch upon, and then maybe we will try to have some answers, and also maybe by looking at the former Mishnah and see the whole picture of a couple. So, Rav Moshe David, can you just put in front of us the last sentence there? Ve'al tityaesh min hapur'anut. Yeah, and do not abandon faith in divine retribution. So, do not abandon faith in divine retribution is basically saying, not only you shouldn't, you should be distancing yourself from evil, but be sure that sometime this evil will get its punishment, right? Does anybody here understand something else? Yeah, so I think that we see that Nitai Ha'arbeli is concentrating very much on the distancing from ourselves from the evil, and more than that, he is giving us you know, he welcomes us to ask for divine retribution, or to hope for divine retribution for the evil. So I think that maybe when we will look at the two sides of this discussion, Yoshua ben Prachia and Nitai Ha'arbeli, we will maybe get a whole picture and maybe some answers for the question that we raised. Rabbi Moshe David, is there any way that we could see both of them together, or is it too big for the screen? No, it's too big for the screen. Oh, yeah, that's good enough. Okay. So
Rav Shmuel has joined us. Welcome. I'm sorry you had something urgent, but you are very welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
oh, hello, Rav Shmuel.
Sorry.
So maybe before we look at the two Mishnayot, Rav Shmuel, would you like to say something about the Rambam?
Wait a second. Yes, I wanted to say a few words, but There has been quite a few different things happened this evening which were unexpected. So perhaps I will just speak orally a little bit about this matter of that we see in this Mishnah. We're going to see. I assume you've had an introduction to both Mishnah. Have you actually gone to read the text of the Mishnah?
Yeah, we had a long discussion about why is it that the Mishnah asks us to distance ourselves from evil. Do we need to be so afraid of evil? Why wouldn't we want to attach ourselves to make evil good?
Right. That's of course a very common subject, and of course, especially in our days, there's a very strong feeling of let's keep everything open, and let me do what I want, let me know about everything, and meet all sorts of people, and I'll sort of make my own choices. And sometimes we have, even in the realm of parenting, we have this sometimes. Parents feel that, oh, I'll open my child to all options. Maybe it's even better to send them to a non-Jewish school, let's say, for example, and let them meet all sorts of people, just as an example, or let them watch whatever they want on TV. It's good to broaden their mind. At the same time, we know that children are impressionable, and actually, we adults are impressionable. So here we see the idea of staying away from a bad, staying away from a bad neighbor, not to get close to a rasha. The Rambam elaborates. Maimonides, he elaborates on this, and he says something very interesting. It's the way. I should have brought you the source, but his main point.
I can bring up the source of Shmuel. 1 second. Give me 1 second. I think you can see it now.
Thank you very much. Okay, so it is natural for a man's character and actions to be influenced by his friends and associates, and for him to follow the local norms of behavior. Just to Moshe David's credit, by the way, I did not tell him the chapter and the law. He knew exactly which Rambam I meant. So I'm very fortunate to have a great Torah scholar with us. Anyways, we say here that the nature of a person, Rambam, as you know, he was a doctor. Here he's almost like a psychologist. He's saying that it's the way a person is that we are influenced by our surroundings. Therefore, you should associate with the righteous and be constantly in the company of the wise so as to learn from their deeds. Conversely, you should keep away from the wicked who walk in darkness so as not to learn from their deeds. This is implied by Solomon's statements: he who walks with the wise will become wise, while one who associates with fools will suffer. Similarly states, happy is the man who has not followed the advice of the wicked. So the Rambam is saying it's built into our nature. It's a natural instinct, and it's not something that anybody can really just run away and say I'm immune. It's a very interesting idea. And that's why we are told to stay away from bad influences, to the extent the Torah even says we say it every day in the Shema, don't go astray after your heart and your eyes, which Talmud says it means looking at immoral things or reading or studying, let's say, very anti-Torah, idolatrous, atheistic material. Now, it's not a blanket rule, because we know there were great rabbis who delved very deep into these types of studies in order to refute, for example, their arguments. Some rabbis are experts in the New Testament, for example, because they have to go into debates with Christians. So there are definitely situations where it is useful to be aware of different ideas which we do not accept ourselves. But as a general thing, it's the Rambam identifies this as like a subconscious problem. Our environment affects us, and it will affect every single one of us. And it's something to keep in mind where do we go, what do we do, and all the more so when we're talking about our children. I once
Shmuel, Shmuel, why would the Rambam say that when we say that people are influenced, why wouldn't we be the influencers versus the influencees?
Yeah, so that's a really good idea, a good point. It's actually very interesting. I mean, I myself probably, thought about this question. I lived in a community that was very religious. I accept the position as a rabbi in a community where the vast majority of people are not religious. So who says I will be the one influencing them? Maybe they will be the ones influencing me. And I think that's a very serious question a person has to ask himself. Let me ask you another question. We all know that moving to Israel is a great mitzvah. It's an amazing thing in Judaism. At the same time, so let's imagine all Jews who have rabbis, teachers, have positions of influence in Europe, in America, in all sorts of places. Why don't they just do the mitzvah and move to Israel? Well, the answer is that would weaken very, very much those people who don't move to Israel. So I think there's a balance here of different arguments. Definitely, there is an idea that a person can have an influence on other people. I mean, our religion started Avraham Avinu and how he was welcoming and loving, and how people were attracted to that. So that's a very powerful thing, and it's something that we can do. At the same time, I think the Rambam is like warning us that even the best person, he will get influenced at some point. That doesn't mean you shouldn't continue the wonderful work you're doing, but you should be mindful that this is a reality.
You reminded me of a mashal of the Baal Shem Tov. Mashal is an allegory, you say? What is the good word for a mashal?
Yeah, parable.
A parable of the Baal Shem Tov, and this parable was said to be on the soul. And the parable is about a king that sends his child to the most far places of the land, because in the central city, in the city of the main city of the land, everybody knows the king. But in the outskirts of the land, far away, this is where the king isn't known so much. And the rules aren't known, and they speak a different language than what they speak in the main city. And so the king had an idea to send his son over there, and the son will teach them the ways of the kingdom, the ways of the king. And the son is going there, and a few time passes by, and the son says to the king, I want to ask you a favor. Please let me come and visit you a little bit. Why? Because he says, I came there and I taught those people everything I know. And actually, I made a lot of progress. They speak more the language of the king. They know more about the rules of the king, about the customs of the kingdom. But I start to get confused. Sometimes I'm not sure if I'm talking the dialect of the king, or did some of the dialect of the people already slip into my speech? Do I remember exactly the customs of the kingdom, or were a few of the things that happened here slipping into the way that I taught the rules there? And so please let me come back to you for a certain time and remember once again, learn again exactly what your rules are and what our language is. And so I think that this is maybe the delicate balance that you were talking about, of Shmuel, that maybe attaching yourself to a bad person in a way, the Mishnah doesn't say that you should run away from them, but that you shouldn't be their neighbor or shouldn't attach yourself to the wicked man, not in the sense of the geography, but in the sense of how you're attaching yourself, your soul. In other words, when you meet a wicked person, you have to be aware that you have a job here. It's not like finding any friend, and soon we will get to the Mishnah before, to see some kind of how's the relationship between the two Mishnayot. What do you think of Shmuel? That you have to know your place before the Rasha.
Yes, I once said that I lived in London for some time, and I was close to a certain Rav called Rabbi Basus. He once had an idea I thought was beautiful, just on this Mishnah. Harchek, it says to go away. Like Harchek is like go far away. Rachok is to be far away from the evil neighbor. And then don't get friendly with the Rasha. Rasha is the wicked man. So it sounds like two guidelines. There's like the wicked man, and there is the bad neighbor. And it's very interesting, because what's a Rasha? What's wicked in the Torah context? Yeah, traditionally wicked was somebody who does things that are against the Torah. It might not be true nowadays. A lot of people, let's say, break the Torah because they were not brought up so religious, or they're not aware, or they're not so knowledgeable. But if you think in Talmudic times, when Torah life was the normal life for Jews, so if somebody broke it, it was wicked action. That's how people would see it. So it's very interesting. It doesn't say. So you have a man here who says, I don't care anymore. No Shabbat, no kasher, nothing. It doesn't say run away from him. It said, don't become his closest friend. You should note him. You should talk to him. You should smile at him. Just, it's not worthwhile for you to become like this very, very close friend of this person who has a negative attitude to the Torah, let's say. But then there's another person, the Shachen Ra. The Shachen Ra is the evil neighbor. What's an evil neighbor? Some of us maybe have had bad neighbors, but I can give you an example. I was trying to build a sukkah, and I got permission from the building, and there was one neighbor who shouted and screamed and said, try to make every possible problem that he can. So that's a bad neighbor. Yeah, it's safe. I'm sure she's not listening to the shiur. She's not Jewish, but that's a bad neighbor. Somebody who it's impossible to get along with, somebody who makes problems, someone who is difficult. Such a person, you just have to stay really far, because this type of bad attitude against everything is unfortunately quite contagious. It says it takes two to start an argument. So that's how arguments start. Only there's one aggressive person to ignite the flame, and you also get annoyed, and you also get angry, and you're going to become a bad person because of that. And so that style of person, just run away from them. So I think this is a really interesting thing you see here, that you could have a person who does bad things for whatever reason it is. He might be rebellious against God, or he might not be knowledgeable that his actions are bad. But it doesn't say like this running away. This running away is reserved for those who are, let's say, bitter and aggressive people. So I think here this connects very much to what you were saying. There are different levels, but definitely the person who has bad character traits, those are extremely contagious.
So what you're saying is very interesting, because in a way, if I would have to measure what's worse, a person with bad character traits or a person that does actions against the Torah, I would say that the person who does actions against the Torah is worse, because if a person has bad character traits, it's what can you do about it? But the way that you're putting it here, it's very interesting that maybe what I understand from you is that there's not much to do with a person. It's not an ethical statement, be far away from a bad person. It's just a practical suggestion. You can't really influence someone that you can't talk to, that you can't get any connection with, that you can't be in any relationship with. So that will be just a waste of time and a lot of sorrow. But the other kind of person who seemingly is worse in the way that he is maybe he's apt to influence you in a worse way, that actually is a person that you're saying, you shouldn't run away from him. You just make sure that you're not attaching yourself to him in a way that that will influence you in a bad way, but rather the opposite.
Yeah.
Just to reflect to that and what the wording of Rabbi Nachman that we saw last week, together with Rav Shmuel, אפילו שהוא רשע גמור, צריך לחפש. In other words, that Rabbi Nachman is talking about someone who's called a rasha, an evil person, and he says you should find within them the goodness within them. So he doesn't say, so following up on that, in other words, that even someone is a rasha, it means that you still, if you are able to reflect their goodness from within, the pure part, their neshama, then they can turn around. Whereas if there's something which is a bad trait or character, as we're hearing here, then it's much more difficult to do so. So it fits, I think, very accordingly with what we saw last week as well.
So in a way, what you're saying of Moshe David is that the way that we are getting to understand this Mishnah is not so much like we said in the beginning, a little bit the opposite of the former Mishnah, but it's concluding both Mishnah together, right? We have to find a good friend, and we have to make ourselves a good rabbi, acquire a good rabbi, right? And to judge every person for his favor. And still it doesn't contradict going away from a bad neighbor. In what way? Maybe we could ask the people around here. In what way doesn't it contradict, but make it a whole thing?
In a way, I think that Nitai Arbali, as you mentioned, it's a continuation of the previous Mishnah, and this is his chevruta, his that he's learning with, that he's saying this. So it's a reaction or a contra to say, well, just make sure you don't go too far. I would say you start with dan et kol adam lekav zchut. You have to have a friend. You have to make sure that you're meriting. But at the other hand, he's just putting the limits to that, because don't go too far that you are actually influenced and you lose your own goodness through doing so.
Mm-hmm. I would say maybe a bit differently that Rabbi Yoshua ben Prachia talks about, like we said, our immediate relationship. What is our immediate needs of how to surround ourselves in good? And in that sense, you have to have a rabbi and you have to have a friend. And then when you have this backbone, you should judge everybody for a good merit. And then when you look outside and you see, oh, there's also bad. Okay, I have this backbone. I have what I need to be steady in the world and to be to be firmly in the good of the world. Now I can see what do I do with the bad, and what do I do with the bad? Well, I shouldn't be attached to it, but I'm yeah, I don't know if I have the whole picture here, but I think somehow it could get like a whole person, a person who is attaching himself from the good, and it knows where the bad is, so he can not learn from it, but live with it.
Shmuel, like, how did you understand the last part, Al titya esh min haporanut, because it's a bit strange. I don't know how that would fit in.
Yeah, I was troubled by the same question. I looked a little bit, perhaps an idea that you stay away from this evil people, or you don't want to become too friendly with them, but at the same time you feel that they're powerful and they seem to be doing well in life, and maybe I should have gotten closer to them. So this is like a reminder, even if you can't see the punishment now, the punishment will come in some way. You don't know, we can't judge God. So maybe a little bit of an encouragement for a person who stays away from these bad people, but at the same time is very tempted because they seem to be the ones often who have power and influence. So maybe it's kind of encouraging and telling you everything is not as it seems. But I would be very interested in hearing your thoughts on it.
Yes, Rebecca.
It was connected to this a bit, but I was just thinking that how does it work together with, like, we should keep some distance, but then also we shouldn't we should also judge everyone, what did it say, towards their favor, or yeah, like have a benefit of a doubt or something like this. So how does it work together? But also with the divine retribution, like it's something there that's connected. I feel that it's, we should not judge because there's also another judge, but then keep our distance. I don't know how it works together. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I can take the question. So it's actually a really good point what you talked about, judging on the one hand and keeping distance on the other hand. This is one of quite hot topics sometimes. For example, a very simple thing. You see someone doing something that's potentially harmful to you, harmful to other people. So are you meant to go and, like, close your eyes, judge him favorably? You could interpret for the good. Maybe it means good. Maybe it doesn't mean anything bad. So it's very clear everywhere in Jewish literature, in the Talmud, in our religious codes, that's not the way it works. This idea of not judging people means I shouldn't have a hatred and a bad assumption about people before I know for sure what happened. And even if I know for sure what happened, maybe I can find a reason why it's not as terrible as I think. But that's all at the level of my thoughts. I shouldn't become a hater who hates other people, or even worse, who acts on his hatred. But if there's a person potentially dangerous, even if I'm not sure about it, then of course I should take action. I should protect those people. And in this case, I should protect myself. So if a person seems to be behaving in a way that's not good, then I can think in my mind all sorts of things, and maybe it's not as bad as it seems. But at the end of the day, I need to protect myself. I need to protect my children. I need to protect my family. I need to protect my friends. So that very important. Judging people favorably doesn't mean be naive or be stupid or anything like that. It means give people the benefit of the doubt. Don't hate them. Don't judge them. At the same time, keep open the possibility that maybe something really bad is happening and take necessary action.
I would say, in my way of looking at it, that maybe it's more saying something about the way that you are looking at evil. So when you're talking about a certain person, you should judge him in favor. But when you are looking at evil, you should believe that there is a price for evil. And so you have to, when you're strong in being in the good side, you have also to realize that this is how the world works, and that's how the world should work. And if it sometimes seems like it's not like that, then you should still not give up on seeing the world like that. Evil will be punished. Evil will be attended to by God in whatever way He chooses. And in a way, this is a way to see the world, attaching yourself to the good, keeping a distance from bad, looking how to work in the world that has bad in it, and knowing that those are objective, even though they seem very subjective, they're objective entities, and believe that God will answer the evil.
I had a reflection on like when we look at the characters or the stories that we've seen lately in Bereshit, and how they can all really fit into this discussion. Because when we look, for example, at Noach, so he says, I'm going to create, or he's actually told, I'm going to create a shelter for myself and shelter myself from the world. He builds the Teva, the ark, for 120 years, and not one person is saved by it besides his family, which is why maybe some of our sages have, have an issue with that, even though he's called a tzaddik. Avraham goes away from the land of pagan worship, of idols, and goes to the Holy Land. He goes to the Promised Land, and you see it says along the way that he has an open tent, attracts people with him, but he is creating his own world, which is not a shelter, but is open to others. And then we have Lot, who thinks that he's the big hero. He goes down to Sodom and he thinks he's going to be the righteous, and maybe that's why he goes there to save the city, and he has to be rescued from there. And we see the bad traits that he has taken up as well. Following that, we have the story of Hagar, who Sarah decides has a very bad influence, and she's sent away with Ishmael, even though Abraham doesn't like it so much. So I think maybe this discussion really comes forward through these different characters, and it's something to think about. Where are the boundaries that each of those people put in terms of the discussion that we are having tonight, and whether that balance actually worked for them or not, and to learn from that. No comments of Natan.
We're 5 minutes late, so we can't.
So thank you, Rav Natan. Thank you, Rav Shmuel, for joining us despite the different things that came up, and your Mesirut Nefesh, to really join us. And it was very enriching, as always, to have you in the discussion. And thank you, everyone here. I felt that today was a really live discussion because you added in as well and asked questions, which is fantastic. It's turning into a real Beit Midrash. For those of you who will be in Oslo for Shabbat or Finland on Sunday, we're really looking forward to a real Beit Midrash. And for those of you who we won't see, so Shabbat Shalom to all of you. Thank you for joining tonight. Thank you again, Rav Natan, Rav Shmuel. And next week we'll continue with the same link from now on. So it was great to see all of you. Laila Tov lekulam.
Laila Tov.
Laila Tov.
לילה טוב.
Thank you. לילה טוב.
תודה רבה. לילה